Hello everyone, this is Evie and welcome back to DeConstructed. Today I am here to share a journal page that I have just finished creating for the Facebook group DeConstructed Art Journaling. This is my first swap in the group and it's a one-on-one swap with CJ Plum. I don't know if you all know her, she's here on YouTube too. I wanted to share the little journal page that I created. This is the first time that I do a deconstructed art journaling page, and for this particular one what you do is that you create an 8x8 size paper or cardstock or whatever base you're going to be working on. You fold it in half and then you work on your front panel, your center spread, and then the back panel. So the theme that we chose together was trees, and what I've done is I've created different trees and I've done it in acrylics in this page. Started my background with a gold metallic paint. From the one I used was from Folk Art and it's called Royal Gold, and then I started creating my tree on top of that. So I used metallic black and the back of my brush. So instead of using the bristle part, I used the back of my brush to create all of my free hand shape, to create the roots of the tree and then go up the trunk and create my branches. And then I started building up my little tree up here with a combination of different greens. So there's metallic there's a little pastel green and a darker hunter green, all in acrylic paints, as you can see there. See if I don't get too much glare. So that's how I created my little tree top, and then I went around all of the edge with different metallic paints and created little geometric shapes to go all the way around and frame it. Can see there. And then once that was dry, I went around my edges with a jelly roll. So the colors that I used for that around here was this metallic plum, also from Folk Art, and I used the metallic bright red from Folk Art and the metallic periwinkle, also from Folk Art. So those and the rest of them were a combination of the metallics and the mattes. So that's how I got all of this contrast up here in the tree, and it gives it more depth by combining the different colors and the different shapes, just adding those with brush strokes. So I used my jelly roll pen for the edge, and I used this new pen that I just got and I love it. It's called, let me see if it focuses there. You see it there? No. I use this pen. It's called Food Ball. It's a 1.5, and I I'm in love with this pen. That's the tip that it brings. So it's a little bit wider, but it writes really smoothly. So that's how I wrote the word trees. So that's how I wrote the word trees down there on the roots. And that's the texture of the front panel. And then once you open to the spread, and I also punched out the corners just on this side, so that when you close it in you see the pointing side, but you also see that edge with a scallop punch on it. Can you see that? So you open it up, and then the inside is worked with different, it's a different style and different materials, but it's still the theme of the tree. So for the top of the tree, I created that using a leftover piece of tissue paper. I applied green, different tones of green of acrylic paint to the back of my tissue paper, or to one side. And then once that was dried, to the front I started stamping different stamps all the way around. And then I ripped it and created my little shape for the tree. And as I applied it to the page, I kept like grabbing it and bunching it up in little areas so it would create all of that texture. So you see all of the stamping and the texture it created. And then I also stamped the word friends and amistad in Spanish. So those are kind of like hidden in between. And then I went over my tree with the same Feud ball pen that I've been like in love with. I've been using it for everything. So then for the base, that base, let me see if I can show you the texture on it. That's a little scrap of paper. There you can see. It's a little scrap of paper that was left over from one of the workshops that I did. The girls were cutting out little panels and embossing different textures onto the panels so that they could create a piece. And that was one of the little scraps that was left over from the workshop, and I decided to use it here. And then I went over that with acrylic paint and did all of my little details with a pen. And for this background that you see here, I used metallic paints, a combination of a pearl paint, a pearlized baby blue, and then the royal blue. I mixed those in with a pearl white, and that's how I got all of those different tones in the background. And then I built my little landscape using torn pieces of an old book in different layers. And then these are little scraps from a few projects that I was working a little while back. I had a few scraps left, and I just tore into those and created this little part here with all the flowers. Those flowers were painted with a Faber-Castell markers. Let me see if I can get closer and you can see. See, you can see the drawing. Those are like freely drawn onto the piece, and then I went over my little mountainscape with different tones of Faber-Castell pit pens and just like smooshed it down and created all of that. And then when you get to this side over here, you see the punch out now. I just drew a little cluster of flowers and long leaves and details on that side. And then for this part over here, I had another little scrap of paper. So what I did with that was that I stamped very lightly some leaves in a very light green. I also painted with a very pastel pearlescent paint in between the leaves. And then I stamped with archival ink. My friendship is a sheltering tree. That little piece, I just cut it out and used some dimensional tape to glue it to the background so it wouldn't take away from my little landscape in the background. So that's how I added a little sentiment to the center. And then when you go to the back, there's another tree. And this one, what I used for this background, which I really like how it contrasted, I used these two different Americana Decor chalk finish paints. And this one is called Refreshing. So it's like a minty green. And I went over that with this one that's called Serene. So they're the same paints. And I don't know if you've tried them, but I'm in love with the consistency of it, and I like the finish of it. That background was dried. I went over all of the background and I added stenciling with a blue. It was a combination of the two blues that I had used in the inside. I used those same tones to create all of that texture with the stencil, so that now you have that matte finish in the background. See, so now you have that matte finish in the background, and then you have the metallic on top of that. So it looks really interesting that way. And then I stamped the word trees up here in the corner, added the stenciling with the metallic paint, and then I created my tree by painting first the trunk of the tree and some starter branches, but then the rest is really loosely painted, and then I went over that and I created my little clusters. I created the tree using these little threads that you use for needlepoint. So those are the 3 tones that I used. I cut little pieces of it and I started letting it dangle down, so it would give like a willow tree kind of effect. But I really like the way the texture came out on the tree for this. And then I stamped out and shelter, and I cut it into little squares and arranged it, and then stamped out the word natural, so it reads trees, a natural shelter. And then I just added my name and put that's from Puerto Rico and the year, so that when she has it in her journal, once she puts it all together, she will be able to identify who created it and where it was coming from and the year. So that's the little tree that I have in the back. It's all about trees in all different styles, very artsy. So they're all, one is more free drawn with the back of a brush, the other one's more built out of little scraps and then doodled on, and then the last one is more dimensional and kind of funky looking. That's one term that I use all the time, my funky trees and my funky girls. And I love just letting things happen with the materials and seeing what comes out. So I have like a basic idea, but from there it just goes wherever it wants to go. So I mean I think it looks kind of interesting. You guys let me know what you think. I hope she likes it. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful to be able to get to know her and to be able to share this with her. So if you're interested in this type of projects and you would like to join the group, search for Deconstructed Art Journaling. Rosemary is the one that runs the Facebook group, and ask to join so that you can take part in the swaps that are offered there. So far, it's been an amazing experience. I've loved the whole process so far, and I'm hoping to be able to join some swaps in the near future. So this was a really, really good start. So CJ, if by any chance you get to watch this, thank you so much for being a wonderful SWAT partner and helping me out through the process. It was a lot of fun to get to know you. So thanks everyone, and have a beautiful week. Bye.